It's the postseason. I bought a GoPro. The NFL 2022 season is over. Regular season. We hit the playoffs. A good bit of my predictions were correct. I can at least say the standings order was more correct on most of them than not, and I still have a Super Bowl contender in the race that I'm going to stick with. So I'm going to come back and compare my preseason predictions to what actually happened at the end of the season. And got it pretty good, not great. You can't predict ties, for one.
To the players, reality is one against one, move and counter move, helmet to helmet. Nowhere is this conflict more evident than at the fringe of battle where the receiver and cornerback match glares. Here, cunning and speed determine the victor. One-on-one, the battle where the loser bleeds alone on an open field.
Start with the AFC East. Bills. You can't predict 16 games to 17 either, but I said the Bills would go 14-3, Dolphins 9-8, Patriots 8-9, and I said the Jets would go 4-13. They overachieved, but boy, I was right on it with the AFC East. Of course, two playoff teams in this division, Bills, Dolphins, and I will of course get into the playoff predictions later in the video. Skip ahead if you want. I don't want you to. You need to see how completely correct I was on most everything. AFC North, Bengals 12-5, Ravens 10-7, Browns and Steelers both 7-10. They kind of finished in that order. Deshaun Watson does suck. The Browns deserve every bit of garbage. Somehow the Steelers finished 9-8. They really, thank God the Steelers and the Packers missed the playoffs, but they keep giving a winning record to Mike Tomlin. Not to say the NFL did not try. I mean, everything was on paper for Pittsburgh to get in, but in comparison, again, can't predict 16 games compared to 17 with foregone circumstances. Bengals 12-4, had Bengals 12-5. Does that mean they would have lost the Bills? Possibly. Yeah, because that lines up. Bills, I had 14-3, so, you know, destiny speaks. Ravens 10-7, they get in the playoffs, had that spot on as well. Steelers 9-8, had them at 7-10 last, but had the Browns at 7-10, so I'm pretty proud of that. AFC South, well, in my prediction video, I said the Jags had the potential to sneak into a playoff spot. They did more than that, thanks to the ultimate collapse of the Tennessee Titans, who lost 7 in a row. This division was shit. Not the worst division of football, but down the stretch you can argue it was the worst division of football. Jags only had 4-13. I had the Colts win the division, but that's what happens when you sign Matt Ryan. Unfortunately, he cost Frank Reich his job, and we had the dumbest coaching signing midway through the season with Jeff Saturday. Surprisingly, has not been fired yet. Like, what are they waiting on? I don't know. Tennessee, 7 in a row, so they were 7-3. Boys, just to be handed the division. And then, you know, Tannehill got hurt. Malik Willis is a bust, but you can't say he's a bust, but they wanted him in the top 10 in the draft. He's not an NFL quarterback. So yeah, 7-10. I had them at 10-7, so I got the numbers right. They just flip-flopped. You know, Texans 2-15, but they really overachieved, and they also lost the top spot in the draft. Where we're going right now, there's 2 quarterbacks that can go. AFC West, well, everybody last year thought, you know, going into this year rather, thought that this was going to be the quintessential, the coup de grace, Cardewa. It was utter trash. The Chiefs again won the division at 14-3. I had them at 9-8, finishing last, thinking they'd fall off. Mahomes led the league in passing. They're not going to win the Super Bowl. Yeah, I'm jumping to conclusions here. They're not going to win the Super Bowl. Chargers 10-7. I had them at 13-4. Still get in. Raiders 6-11. And I called it. Should have held on to the interim coach last year. Josh McDaniels ruined that team. Ran Derek Carr off. Now they think that they're going to make a play for Brady, and what good is that? Brady's done. Broncos 5-12. Boy, I mean, if me and Russell Wilson had a cook-off with ramen, I'd still win. You can't fuck up ramen. He'd still find a way to mess it up. Nathaniel Hackett, head coach, gone. Nobody did anything they were supposed to do on that team. The defense just wasn't there. Injury to line. How many running backs did they use this year? Melvin Gordon gone. And I don't know who they're going to get as our coach. On to the NFC. Oh, the NFC East. The one thing that stuck out to me all season was the quote about the Giants. I said they could go 2-15 or they could go 15-2. And on the middle, I picked 2 and 15. I just had no hope in Danny Dimes. A little bit of an easier schedule. Brian Daboll, very good job. They're in the playoffs. Almost everybody made it in the playoffs in that division. The Eagles look like the best team in football. Part of me wants to compare them to the 2015 Panthers. I'm not going to do that. Plus, Jalen got hurt. They're good. I just don't know if they've got the lasting power. Dallas looked great the first half of the year. And then they brought Dak Prescott in, went back to old ways, and we'll see what happens in the playoffs. The Commanders are right there. I had them finishing 9-8 to win the division. They did the most Ron Rivera thing and finished 8-1. Ron Rivera took over as king for Jeff Fisher of the 8-8. He's so damn mediocre that he squeaked a tie in there with the Giants, who went 9-7-1. Yeah, Carson Wentz was never the option. Ron's past his prime. He didn't know that they were going to get eliminated with that loss 2 weeks ago. Terrible. So Dallas did not go 7-10. They went 12-5, finished second. Eagles did not go 8-9. They went 14-3. On the NFC North, and I can say that most of this was spot on enough. And the Vikings 11-6, finished 13-4. Won a bunch of games they had no business winning. They lost games they had no business losing. And Justin Jefferson is a curse and a blessing for fantasy football and for DraftKings. Jefferson goes all out 3 times a year, has his stats. And then you get games like the last 2 weeks where he just doesn't do anything. They get in 13-4, win the division. The Detroit Lions, I said, were potential playoff contenders. They were going to make a push, and they did. Fortunately, they came up a game short. They did the world a favor by making sure Karen Frogers stays home. Packers finished 8-9. I had them at 10-7. Lions I had at 8-9. The flip-flop in order too. We're seeing the end of Aaron Rodgers. We're seeing the end of the Packers. Bears, well, I had a low cup for them, but holy shit. They actually started 2-1. They beat the Niners. Can we also just throw out there that nobody is talking about Trey Lance just being absolute garbage? We just forgotten? Oh, he's a project. No, we got Brock Purdy on the Niners now, and we'll get to that in a second. Fields also a bust. Some reason now, I mean, people still hype him up like he's all this and the Bears got nothing. And he's part of the reason he can't throw. There's teams with worse receivers. I mean, come on, Baker Mayfield came into the Rams. Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. And made something of their backups down the stretch. So, I mean, Tampa Bay, NFC South. The worst division of football since 2014, when it was also the NFC South. Panthers won that at 7-8-1, but did win a playoff game the next year. Went to the Super Bowl. I don't know. They battled each other in conference. You can't. Tampa just fell off, and I did say in the prediction that Todd Bowles could potentially ruin this team, and that's exactly what he did. 8-9 for Tampa. I had him at 13-4. I'm just like, there's just no way. I mean, it's Brady. There's too much talent. No matter how much Bowles brings them down, they'll get past it. They even had Bruce Arians in the booth for some reason. I guess as some sort of correspondent, I don't know, but they finished 8-9 and just looked absolutely terrible. It started off pretty good and then just shit the bed. Panthers, Saints, and Falcons. Well, I had that in the order in my division. Panthers at 9-8, almost made the playoffs, but I did say when we get to week 4, started bad. Fire rule said that McAdoo would take over. He could make a playoff run. Well, Steve Wilkes took over, and you got to argue that if we were not screwed in the Falcons game with the phantom celebration penalty, and then Eddie Pinheiro, who after that game turned into the most accurate kicker in the NFL, missed 2 key kicks. And this is the reason why those games in the middle of the season like that sting, because the ones that will come back to haunt you. You know it. And really, I think Carolina could have beaten Dallas in the playoff and at least gotten to the second round. Sam Darnold came in. He used 3 quarterbacks this year. Baker didn't really work out. Wasn't suited to him. You can see when he was sent to the Rams. It definitely was the Panthers and McAdoo, and especially Rule. His last game he played as a Panther was against the Ravens, and winds were like 30 degrees. You couldn't throw the ball. Ravens defense is stout enough, so really coming into our own at that point, and then we started getting some wins back to back. So the Saints had, let's just remember that Peter King and Marcellus Wiley picked the Saints to go to the Super Bowl. And they picked the Saints to go to the Super Bowl. What on fucking earth did you see to make you think that the Saints had anything? They've got Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston. Yeah, their defense was offensively, they have nothing. And coach hasn't gotten fired yet. Dennis Allen's still there. Don't know what's going to happen. Boy, the Falcons were a fun team this year. They had the roster of a 2-15 team. Boy, some of the most entertaining football all year was watching the Falcons either squeak it out at the end or choke, which is what they're best for. But Matt Ryan took that choke to the next level and carried that curse with them. So they're still kind of brushing off the dust. It's the first Falcons team I haven't hated in a long time. They were fun to watch with Mariota, and then they finally put Ritter in, and then nobody's really talking about this. Marcus Mariota quit. When they announced Desmond Ritter, like it was one day, I'm like, that's a big deal. Carr left the team for the Raiders. He's done. But Mariota quietly said, I got a kid coming, I'm just leaving. Like, there's no point in me being here, so good on him. But man, 7-10 for them. Tides are changing in the NFC South, and hopefully the Panthers will make a run next year. But they'll rebuild because I don't think they're holding on to Steve Wilkes, but a lot of people want him to stay. Another year without the fucking playoffs. We're going out, so we're entering year 6 of just nothing. This is the most entertained and the most I've been into the team and felt a relation to it when Wilkes took over since Ron left. NFC West, wow, got the numbers right for the Rams. Had them at 12-5. They finished 5-12. Matt Stafford might never play again. You'll hear some people say, but that injury you don't come back from, so Baker's there. Don't know if Sean McVay is going to stick around. I think he did this last year too. Like these divas get to the end of the season, like, oh, I want to come back. And the owner's like, oh, well, here's a bunch of money, come back. Doesn't want to go through a rebuild? Any position he would take over, unless he's going to pull a Sean Payton, retire for a year, then come back to somebody like if Tampa holds on to Brady. Now, I could see if Brady didn't leave Tampa and, Bowles was booted after the season, then you could see him go there, but I don't think McVay and Brady would work too well together. I think it was the Niners, 13-4, win the division. I had them at 9-8. They got Christian McCaffrey, but if it wasn't for that trade, the season wouldn't have turned around. So I hope McCaffrey can get a ring at some point, and so they're disappointing. Shanahan knows how to use them. Seahawks 9-8. I had them at 5-12. I don't think anybody could have saw the emergence of Geno Smith. Now, I was right about Kenny Walker. Walker came in, I don't know, I'd say week 5, week 6, really took over the load at running back and just went off. Had some injury issues. Was the right call though. It's a great draft pick for him. They keep Geno Smith next year, who knows? I mean, they can build on what they got, but technically he's old. They sneak in the playoffs. Thank God. I mean, it's better than watching the Packers boot. The Packers went and played the Niners. That would just be, I'm going to tell you right now before we jump to the playoff section, the Cardinals also 4-13 finished. I had them at 8-9. Kyler Murray played a lot of Call of Duty, and Cliff Kingsbury got fired. That team, you don't hire college coaches. You don't do it. Look at the Jaguars. Urban Meyer, awful. Like the worst coaching hire possibly ever, besides Matt Rule. But Doug Peterson comes in. People forget that he had issues with the Eagles locker room, but clearly he's in the other Myrtle Beach, which is Jacksonville. And it seems to be a perfect fit right now. Although you watch the Jaguars in the last 2 games and they weren't too stout. On to the playoffs. So I'm going to make my predictions right quick. First round, we have Seahawks at Niners, Giants at Vikings, and Cowboys at Bucks. I don't think this is going to be very exciting. We have injuries that are ruining 2 of these teams. In the NFC, the Eagles get the bye. In the NFC, there's one that's kind of a toss-up. We'll start with Seahawks-Niners. The Niners are going to win this game. Giants at Vikings, boy, I think this will be different if it was in the Meadowlands, but I'm going to give the Vikings the nod here. Cowboys-Bucks, well, if it was Thanksgiving, I'd say Dallas. Tampa's also at home. Dallas loses. They're 1-done once again. Tampa will win this. It's going to be a struggle. I don't think it's going to be a very good game. On to the AFC. Dolphins at Bills. Boy, this was like the culmination football game a month ago. Damar Hamlin, right now the Bills have everything going for him, but was announced today, Tua is not playing. The Dolphins stand no chance. The AFC's were just to the Ravens, Bengals, and Lamar Jackson wanting this deal. He is injured again. I assumed he was going to play. It's the playoffs. He's not. And it's Cincinnati. They just played. Now, you don't want to play a team, but with both of these, you don't want to play a team 3 times, not 6, 3 times in 1 year. Never want to do that. Ravens and Dolphins are both a waste of a playoff spot. Who else in the AFC could have went? The Patriots. Honestly, you could argue the Jets if they had a quarterback, but they don't have a quarterback anymore. I guess this is basically the best 6, but the best game of the weekend, we did make it in. The Chargers, Justin Herbert's first playoff game, travels to Jacksonville. I would have figured they would just immediately pigeon Chargers-Jaguars as the 4:30 game, the throwaway wild card game on Saturday, but they didn't. Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence has looked great down the stretch, except for the last 2 games. We're better seeing the Jaguars in the playoffs, and I think it's good for the league. Yeah, the Chargers are going to win this game just because the defense. The divisional round, we'll see Niners hosting the Vikings. and then the Eagles hosting the Bucks. This might be like old school playoffs for getting on. I'm feeling blowouts across the board on all this, to be honest with you. I don't think the Vikings and Giants will be a blowout. I think that'll be tight. The Vikings will win. Niners will win that game pretty handily. That will be where we get primetime Kirk Cousins, and then Jefferson's nowhere to be seen. And then Bucks Eagles, I believe we've seen how that worked earlier in the season. Bucks having to go to Philly in January. They won't do anything. The Eagles will run away with that. AFC divisional. Unfortunately, we won't get the Bills Bengals AFC championship that the scriptwriters were hoping for, but we're gonna get that replay. That's gonna be a tough game across the board, but the Bills always manage to hurt themselves. I think the Bengals get this win and advance. Chargers at Chiefs in the divisional round. This is where the choke job happens for Mahomes. That's right. The Chargers will fulfill my preseason prediction destiny. The Chargers will travel to Cincinnati for the AFC Championship, and the Niners will travel to Philadelphia for the NFC Championship. For the AFC Championship, we finally get to see Burrow and Herbert. The future is now. The Bengals will win that, represent AFC in the Super Bowl. The Niners will win this, and we will get, I don't know why I looked over there, we will get Bengals, Niners, 3. That's right. 1981, Joe Montana's first Super Bowl against Ken Anderson. 1989 was 88. 88 or 89, I forget. The drive. John Candy sitting in the end zone. Niners win 20-16. Montana put together the drive, hitting Rice multiple times on that drive. And Bengals had Boomer Esiason at that point. Third time's a charm, though. Cincinnati will win the Super Bowl. Cincinnati will win the Super Bowl. And it will be a high-scoring affair, much like last year, like 42-38 or something like that. Don't forget, Kyle Shanahan, when put in those specific situations, chokes so much he was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons when they gave up the 28-3 lead last year against the Rams. And there's also, the Super Bowl loss against the Chiefs a couple years ago. So the Bengals will win the Super Bowl, the first of many for Burrow. I mean, I hope the Chargers can do it. I'm already over the Chiefs. I mean, them doing their little dreidel drop or whatever the hell they did against the Raiders. It's like, dude, that cockiness is going to catch up to you. The Bengals were right there last year, and usually the Super Bowl losing teams, they're the ones that have the fall off the next year. This year, the Rams ended up being the finishing with the worst record following a Super Bowl victory of any team ever. Let's hope I'm right. This is Feldman Football. I'm going to go pro. Hopefully the audio is good. We will hopefully see you next season.